Welcome back, everyone, to the Bent Limbs podcast. I'm your host, Matt Thielking. This is episode 13, and today, you guys, we're going to go over kind of the three key elements that I think led to me killing my biggest buck to date here in Michigan. If you guys haven't already watched the One Beer Chat video that we dropped a couple weeks ago, that's kind of the story of kind of how the hunt unfolded. Take a minute to watch that, whether it's, right now, if you pause this, jump over there, or if you listen to it after you listen to this podcast. I'm really not going to repeat a ton of that story just because we already covered it. I just really want to cover more of, the elements of how I was able to be successful. And really, these elements, they're not a lot of gear elements. They're not a lot of like hunting strategy per se. I feel like they're a little different than what you typically hear on a podcast or see on a hunting video. And I think they're really important. They're almost like a little bit to me like the mental side or like mentality side of how these things, they're really important to me. I think they can help you guys too. And I want to just kind of dissect them, each of them, more so than that One Beer Chat video, because I really didn't go into this stuff in that video. I guess first off, this would be kind of a thing that we've covered a lot, but I think it goes without saying, especially with the other podcasts and videos that you guys have hopefully watched, is just knowing and being 100% confident in your gear. That's kind of where I'm going to leave it. It's just knowing exactly what to expect when you fire that shot, exactly how your bow is going to shoot, being sighted in really well, making sure arrows are tuned, exactly, which arrow is going to be shooting first out of your crossbow, how the broadhead attached to it is going to fly, like all that stuff. I mean, as down to the, finest detail you can be, the more confident you can be in your equipment, the better. And that doesn't just go for your weapon, your arrow, your broadhead. I mean, that goes to your clothes, knowing where different items like a rangefinder, things like that, are going to be in different pockets when you need them, how you're going to be positioned or practicing out of your hunting setup, be it a saddle, be it a tree stand, be it a ground blind with a tripod, whatever that setup is, just being ultra confident in your equipment. I'm going to make that kind of the asterisk tip. That's kind of, I feel like it goes without saying with some of the other stuff that we've talked about of making sure that all of that is buttoned down to the absolute, most detail you can put into it. So when that moment of truth arises, you have nothing but confidence. You're not even thinking about your equipment. You're just focused on executing the shot at hand. Tip number one, or item number one of my hunt. And this is kind of like the fun aspect of it and the value aspect of it. And that is hunting and scouting as a team or with some of your best hunting buddies. My group of friends, I would say like my real core group of my hunting buddies, we don't really have a deer camp or a big property where we can all get together and kind of, have that tradition, be it a rut weekend or an opening day of firearm. I mean, it would be awesome if we did. I hope one day we can have that. But the reality is we just don't. And a lot of us don't. I don't want to say that's not like our hunting style, but it's more we have a lot of access to smaller, both public and private pieces, and we hunt some bigger tracts of public land, and we kind of sprinkle and ping pong around all of those different things. And a lot of it is individual, myself included. But in this particular property, which was public land, we, and when I say we, myself, my friend Nick, and my friend Chad, we decided that we were going to, really hunt this as a team. And this is a property that we've hunted a little bit in the past. We've got a couple years of history with it. It's a big piece. And Nick last year, he was the first one to shoot something off of this property. He shot a really nice, tall 8-point off of it. And going into the 2023 season, we kind of just collectively said, let's share all of our intel. Let's spend a little bit more time on this property because we saw that it had a lot of potential. Even with the other hunting pressure, um, we knew we could probably do even better than what we did in the years past. And what we did in the years past was good, especially with Nick getting a nice buck, but we wanted to take it to another level. So we decided we're going to scout together. We're going to share intel, whether it's trail cam pictures, boots on the ground, what we're seeing, all that stuff. And that's just really cool. It's really fun because it makes it like it's kind of a deer camp mentality throughout the entire season. And it just helps you, really hone in, dissect some of these bigger tracts of public land faster, better, and, genuinely feeling like your team out there hunting. That if somebody gets something, everybody's pumped up. And I'm confident those guys feel that way too. And I really hope they do because, this particular buck, I would not have harvested them without Nick and Chad. That is definitely a statement that is true. And it really was, even though I'm the one that shot it, I hope those guys feel like it was a team buck that got harvested. So we scouted together in the off season. This is a spot that Nick actually found. And I guess just to describe it a little bit more, big tract public. And Nick found this thicket, and that it is an area that we hadn't really hunted before. And he kind of dabbled around it in the late season of 2022 and just said, hey, you guys, I think we got to take a look at this a little bit more like in the off season. Because this looks like something that has potential. And if you want kind of just a description of it, I mean, like think of some kind of big, hardwood setting around private ag. I mean, that's like a very stereotypical setting in Michigan, especially the southern half of the Lower Peninsula. And this particular spot is one that we really couldn't see on a map, but it was actually good cover, like thick cover, situated amongst open timber. And I think what made it good is that you couldn't see it from a map. It wasn't just like a swamp. It wasn't just like a clear cut. It was something that like you had to find it by putting boots on the ground. So Nick and I, one day, we actually went out and scouted. This is the off season. There wasn't snow yet on the ground. It was early January, so we could see all the sign from 2022, and a lot of good trails, a lot of good sign. And we found this big community scrape, like right in the heart of this, the thick area. And I was like, this is a spot we are putting a camera. I'm like, yeah, I'll put one of my cell cams here. Like this is where one of my cell cams is being allocated to. And what was also cool is those guys, they had some cell cams too. And we used stealth cams and muddies, which allow you to share those cameras with everyone. So we all, put a cell cam or two out in a few key spots, ones we had history with, as well as some new spots. And then we all just shared them to one another. So that way everybody got all the pictures at the same time, and we would sit there and game plan. And no one really hunted this until the rut, and the first person to hunt this was Chad. And Chad hadn't been out a ton this year, and he was kind of trying to figure out, what he wanted to do, where he wanted to go. I remember we were on a group text, and he was kind of trying to figure out what to do. And we had gotten some, great pictures of bucks. Nothing that I felt like we could really like pattern, but nice Michigan deer, daylight pictures of said bucks and just deer in general. And I told Chad in the group text, I was like, dude, go dive into that scrape. I'm like, just go dive into there, because we've got a camera. We've never hunted around this. If you blow it up, who cares? But we gotta get some more intel. We gotta get some boots on the ground type of thing in this area. I was like, just go dive in there and see what happens. And Chad did. And Chad did a couple mornings. It was either two in a row or two very close to one another. And he had some great action. And I mean, when I say that, like, this area is thick, you guys, it's pretty thick. You almost have to hunt it from the ground, and your shooting lanes are are few. And Chad had multiple bucks in range, multiple good bucks. He thinks the buck that I shot was one of them, but he just could not. He just could not get a good shot at these deer. But he relayed that info to us, and that was super helpful, because what he was seeing when he was hunting were deer we weren't getting on camera on those particular days. So it was even more of a, I don't know what you would want to call it, just like it affirmed that this spot was good, that there were deer using it. We were learning, we weren't wrong on how to, the way Chad entered, the way Chad hunted it, all that kind of stuff. Like, it worked out. He just could not quite get a good shot at some of these bucks that he was seeing. And it was just really cool. Like, no one had like their spot. I think that is just something that made it fun, made it really feel like we were a team. It wasn't like, this is my spot. Okay, Chad, your spot's over there. Nick, your spot's down here. And, Chad, don't go to my spot when I'm not there, type of thing. Like, there was none of that. It made it super fun. It made it valuable to all of us, learning and dissecting not only this particular thick area, but the whole property in general. And ultimately, like, if we weren't working together as a team and putting the puzzle pieces, together as a 3-person unit, we wouldn't have the intel that we have, and I wouldn't have shot the buck that I have. So that's kind of my first tip, you guys. If you've got some of those buddies, if you've got areas like that, whether it's public or private, and you really got to just be honest with your buddies. I feel like just being like, hey, I want to hunt this as a group. I want to kind of have a group mentality, we share intel, and if somebody gets one, that it's a team success. Like, if you've got those buddies and you've got a particular spot where you can do that, I would definitely say do that, because it is valuable, and it can produce for one or multiple people. And it likely, what you gain year in and year out is just going to make you guys and make the way you hunt that particular spot even better. Number 2 is, don't be afraid to hunt from the ground. And when I say hunt from the ground, I'm not talking a pop-up blind or a box blind or anything like that. I'm talking just like straight up turkey hunting style, but deer hunting. Don't be afraid to do that. It might not be advantageous, most of the time or all the time, but there are times where that might be your best option, or that might be your quietest option, or that might be the option where, if you don't really know where you want to be, instead of hanging and hunting on public or private and kicking yourself because you were 50 yards off of a trail and all you did was watch deer walk out of range through a thick area all day, like, hunting from the ground, like, you can make adjustments now. Like, you can just adjust. If you start seeing a pattern, you can just wait until the coast is clear and go over there. I think that's something that not enough people do. And we see it, with like Zach from the hunting public, like, or just the hunting public in general, like how much those guys, like, they are not afraid to hunt from the ground. Like, if that's the best option for the spot that they're going to, or the only option at the best spot, whatever it is, like, they just do it, and they kill deer year after year by hunting from the ground. They're doing it with compound bows, let alone the advantages that we have as a crossbow hunter. So don't be afraid to do that. And, I've used a ghillie suit before, and ghillie suits are freaking awesome. If you guys have never used one, Like I've got a cheap one from Amazon that, man, I've tested it in thick cover. I've tested it on field edges. Like it's sweet. If you kind of see what you're gonna blend into the best, like you don't need a ton of cover. The ghillie suit does a really nice job just adding depth and texture and just turning your human outline into just kind of more of a what you look like a bush. I mean, you really do. And it's super fun hunting that way. But you don't necessarily need one. um, I did not use one on this hunt. It would have worked great where I was, and I think it's necessary in other spots. And I'm more telling you guys this because it is a tool that you can like literally stick in your backpack, and if you need to just go ground mode, you throw it on quick, and you can be you can be your own cover, you can be your own blind without much else around you. There's other situations where if you don't have it, still, like, don't be afraid. Find cover, find little spots to tuck into if you can. And if you can't, find the best thing that you've got in the best spot and just sit down and be still and see what happens. That's what I did. I was wearing, if you guys want to know, I guess from like a gear perspective, I was wearing the subalpine pattern from Sitka. I was wearing some Sitka gear. I feel like that camo pattern, it does a really good job. Some of the digi or more blotchy stuff, it definitely helps, I think, not only in a tree, but on the ground, just break you up a little bit more or give you just a little bit more time. Like you might get picked if deer get close or if there's a bunch of them around you, but I feel like it does a little bit better than some of the traditional camos where I personally feel like I'm a brown or gray or whatever colored kind of blob. So that's what I was wearing. And I was just sitting up against the base of a big pine tree, and there really wasn't much other cover around me. There was a lot of cover in the area, and where the deer came from was a lot of cover. And if, I shot him at 10 yards, if he would have gotten any closer, kind of cleared some stuff, had I not been able to get a shot with what he was doing, he probably would have busted me. But I had enough cover in the right spot, and he was the first deer that I saw. Like there was certainly some luck involved, but I would not have been able to really hunt from a tree there. And it just worked out. I mean, literally just being able to go up, sit, be like, this is the spot I need to be. I'm going to sit down right here and I'm going to see what happens. It worked. And I mean, being a crossbow hunter, you guys, I think people forget, we talk a lot about how fast crossbows are, how far they can shoot, how much energy they have. I think the biggest advantage of a crossbow hunter is having archery equipment that you don't have to draw, that you literally don't have to move to be able to execute a shot. Like if you're ready, if you're in a position, whether it's on the ground or whether it's in a tree, even if deer pick you, if you are ready to execute the shot, or you see them coming far enough, or you're, like in my case, I was literally looked like I was turkey hunting with a crossbow. Like the crossbow was on my knee. I was just sitting there. And as soon as I saw him start coming in, it was safety off and I'm ready to execute that shot. That is such a huge advantage, you guys. Like, don't take that for granted. I know the crossbow industry, and rightfully so. I mean, that, like, the equipment, the technology, like all that kind of stuff, like it certainly is. There are certainly advantages to the, kinetic energy and momentum that you can achieve with your arrow from a crossbow, the distances that you can shoot, the accuracy at which you can shoot, all that kind of stuff. But to me, the biggest advantage is not having to draw, not having to move, especially in close range situations or especially on the ground. So just remember that, because you can execute ground shots, even if it's a setup like mine where it's not the most ideal, it can still work because you literally don't have to move to to be able to kill that deer or kill that target animal, whatever it is that you're hunting. So just remember that. And hunting from the ground, like I said, like even if it's a planned ground hunt, I personally feel like I can be more quiet, especially in a morning, hunting from the ground, or maybe it's hunting from the ground for like a portion of the time. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I struggle in the dark, slipping into a spot and hanging and hunting where I feel like I'm not making noise. What I feel confident in is getting to a particular area and just hunting on the ground, and it might end up being just the first whatever hour of sunlight, 30 minutes of sunlight, and then seeing how deer are moving. If there's deer in the area, I'm just sitting there. If there's not, I can get a better picture of, or a better view of kind of the layout, better picture of what's going on. I can see the trees much better, what I can climb, what's the best thing to climb, instead of just kind of going in and being like, I'm going to climb this tree. I'm going to this spot on this pin that I dropped on Onyx, and I'm going to climb this tree, and this is where I'm going to sit for half the day. That can work, but the flexibility is not there, at least to me. And just being able to slide in quiet, being able to pivot and make adjustments, being able to go from ground to up in a tree, or being able to go from up in a tree down to the ground. Like, I love that flexibility, and hunting from the ground. I don't know. Sometimes I also just feel like I'm actually, I don't know if this sounds like bad, and I don't want you guys to think the way you're hunting is wrong by any means. But sometimes I feel like when I'm on the ground, like I feel like I'm actually hunting. Like I feel like I'm pivoting. I feel kind of a little more one with the woods, and I'm making adjustments, or I'm making moves based on what I'm seeing. Versus sometimes I feel like, and I do this a ton. So again, please don't take offense to it. But sometimes I feel like with, my house or some of the other private properties that I've got some history with, where I have pre-hung stands, sometimes I feel like I'm just sitting. Sometimes I feel like I'm playing a little bit more of an analytical game with trail cameras and weather data and moon phase and wind directions and all that kind of stuff, like putting puzzle pieces together more on a computer, and then trying to time up a sit to where I think a particular buck or bucks will move through, versus pivoting more on the fly. And I think both, like, I love doing both. Don't get me wrong. And both have worked for me. And I'm sure, the analytical part, the timing up the correct stands that you have pre-hung on properties with history like that, that works. Don't stop doing that, but adding the element of being a little bit more flexible with the way you hunt, adding the element of pivoting based on movement, pivoting based on what you're seeing that day that maybe you didn't see historically, or maybe it's a brand new property or whatever it is. Like, sometimes I feel like when I'm on the ground, or I'm going from ground to tree, tree to ground, and just doing what I feel like I need to do on that particular day to kill a deer, I leave the woods feeling like I hunted and I didn't just sit. I hope that makes sense to you guys. And that is a feeling that I think is important. That's a feeling that I think helps you grow as a hunter. You really can figure out what you can and can't get away with. Like, I always feel like in those situations that I'm learning a lot, that I'm honing skills, that I'm just even if I don't see anything, or if I don't see what I'm targeting, like, I feel like I'm always learning. I feel like I'm always engaged. I feel like I'm always in the moment and just hunting. And sometimes when I'm, behind my house in a stand that I've had for years, that's been a great stand and whatever, sometimes I feel like I'm just sitting in it because it's a good stand to sit on that day, and that I'm not really learning much. So Item number 2, you guys, don't be afraid to hunt from the ground. Don't be afraid to be flexible. Don't be afraid to pivot when you need to pivot. And I think you guys will find it's not only fun, but you can have success from it. The last one, and this one is a super important one to me. And I think this can be one, especially from the mental side of things, that can be really important and really beneficial to you guys too. And that is, whether it's public or private, again, having a spot that you're not afraid to screw up, that you are not at all afraid to just blow it up if that ends up happening. Um, these are spots where you can be aggressive. These are spots where you can do some of that, flexible, mobile, um, pivot your hunts in the moment type of thing. And for me, like, I need these spots. Like, I have to have them because I drive myself crazy sometimes with trying to pick stand locations based on trail cams, based on weather, based on historical data, based on all that type of stuff. And then it drives me nuts when I'm in a stand and I get pictures from a different one I could have hunted. Like things like cell cams, I love them and I hate them. I love them with the real time intel. I love what, I can gather from them, how I can use them, but I also hate them because it makes me second guess myself so many times throughout the season when I pick a particular spot based on whatever analysis that I did, and I get pictures from one, two, maybe multiple different spots or properties that I also could have picked, and a buck walks by. So having spots that you can just go for broke and not be afraid to screw them up, not be afraid to put pressure on deer. Public land is freaking great for this because even the best spots that you have, like any Joe Bob out there at any time could just walk in and blow it up anyways. And that's kind of how I try to think of them. I'm not saying hunt stupid, but what I'm saying is hunt in a manner that you normally wouldn't hunt those historical properties, those historical stands where you're more careful, where you're more calculated, in which you should be. But having one that is okay to blow up if you do, I feel like just for me personally, like that mentality, it takes a ton of pressure off of me. It switches my mindset from tippy toeing around my home 20 acres and worrying like, oh, did I screw something up? Did I put too much pressure on? Did I blow this property up and now my house isn't gonna produce at all? But just having one where you can do that, or if that happens, you're not worried about it, I think is huge. I literally hunt them so much more relaxed, so much looser. Again, I feel more like I'm hunting, not just sitting. Doing so, I'm often successful in those. I don't know if it's the mentality where it's just positive and you're just excited and you just kind of want to see what's going on or see what you can figure out. I don't know if it's just the pressure type of thing. I don't know if it's the you're willing to pivot, so you're usually willing to stay out there a little longer or switch locations or things that you're doing throughout the morning, midday to evening. I don't know. But from a mentality standpoint, being able to do those intermittently in between some of those historical stands where you go back to more of that calculated type of sit, it helps me a lot. I feel like I'm always learning on those. I feel like no hunt is like a waste when I do those because I'm usually finding something. Even if I'm not seeing deer, I'm usually finding sign. I'm usually finding I'm finding where other hunters might be if it's on public land. That's something I didn't really touch on yet, but we can go into is Chad, Nick, and I. We not only shared deer that we saw, but we also shared where we were finding other hunters. We shared where we were finding stands. We shared where we maybe saw another hunter, where another hunter parked, and kind of tried to figure out maybe where he accessed, or if it was, this guy hunting this particular stand. Like we put together kind of like a map of this, using Onyx and stuff, a map with pins and dissected not only how like we thought deer were working through this property or what we were seeing, but also what we were seeing from other hunters, and using that to our advantage, or kind of seeing when other guys were out, whether it was a weekend, whether it was weekdays, whether, this guy always goes over here and this dude always parks over here. We were kind of trying to pattern people as much as we were deer. That's another, that's another big one. But ultimately, you guys, I think, having a team of guys that you can break down a particular property with, having, a property, this property with your buddies that you don't have necessarily assigned spots, that you're willing to share intel, where you're not afraid if anyone blows the property up, and seriously, not being afraid to hunt from the ground if you need to, or if you want to, or if that's the best spot. I think that can pay dividends for you, because it did for me. And while this is by far the best buck that I've shot, it's not the first one that I've shot in this manner. And every time when it happens, it's just super cool. It's super satisfying. I feel like I gain a lot from it. And I think you guys can too. So I hope you've got that group of friends. I hope you've got that property, or that you can find it. And I hope you're not afraid to hunt from the ground, because it's awesome. It can be really awesome. And if, I just want to say again, if my buddies Chad and Nick are listening to this, thank you guys, because this has been a really fun season and it's not over yet. And I'm glad we've been tag teaming this property, or this particular, piece of public together. And I hope you guys feel like this buck, that you guys were a part of it, and that you guys, like, this buck is kind of a team buck, because I think it is. And I know that's easy for me to say, being the one that shot it, but really without, Nick kind of finding this spot first, and Chad not being afraid to dive in and blow stuff up. And he didn't blow stuff up. He just got really good intel. And then me, taking some of that most recent intel, pivoting at a time where I thought I completely blew the property up. And again, you guys listen to that one beer chat, you'll understand more what I'm saying. But making mistake early in the hunt, and pivoting quick and getting to a spot where, I thought I needed to be, instead of the one that I just bumped deer out of. That's how I got it done. I should say that's how we got it done. So if you guys are listening to this, man, both of you, seriously, thank you. Because I truly feel like this was a team effort, and I feel like there's a lot more team efforts to come, not only here in the, closing weeks of the 2023 season, but the 2024 season. We've got a lot more intel. We've got still good deer that haven't been killed, and I'm looking forward to the last third of this season and moving on to next season. So that's what I've got for you guys. 3 tips for how to expand your hunting experience, how to get it done in ways that maybe you're not. And I hope this helps you. I really do. And I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, please do me a favor, hit the like button down below on this video. And if you haven't already, please do me the favor of hitting that subscribe button as well, because we've not only got more podcast episodes coming to you some point soon, but also lots of videos on the Draggin Deer Outdoors YouTube channel. Thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate it. Be safe out there. God bless. Good luck in the woods. And we'll see you again soon on the Bent Limbs Podcast.